Mr. President, I have the honor to present this statement on behalf of the members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in my capacity as the acting chair of the group. Mr. President, let me express our appreciation to you for convening this meeting of the Assembly on the current situation in Palestine, with particular reference to the Gaza Strip. This meeting is taking place owing to the unfortunate event of the use of the veto on 25 February 2024 by the United States of America, being a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, during the Council's debate held under the agenda item, the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question. It is deeply regrettable that the Security Council has failed, once again, to assume its primary responsibility under the United Nations Charter to halt the atrocities perpetrated against the Palestinian people in Gaza by the Israeli occupying power. This failure has no doubt reflected negatively on the primary role of the Security Council, the principal organ of the UN with regard to maintenance of international peace and security. It is obvious that since the launch of the aggression on Gaza and elsewhere in Palestine nearly the past 5 months ago, the entire world has continued to follow with growing despair and anger the monumental and unending suffering imposed on the Palestinian people in Gaza. This situation has resulted in the colossal loss of lives and wanton destruction of homes, schools, hospitals, and religious sites in Gaza due to the incessant attacks by the Israeli occupying power on the territory. The number of human casualties from the Israeli aggression on Gaza has grown further due to the recent bombardment of the city of Deir al-Balah in Gaza. According to the OIC's Observatory on Israeli Crimes and Violations against Palestinians, a total number of 690 deaths were recorded during the week from 20 to the 26th of February 2024, while over 1,057 persons sustained several injuries. It is on record that since the beginning of the aggression on Gaza on 7 October 2023, the total number of persons killed or massacred rose to 29,700. 70% of them were women and children. More than 12,500 were children. Mr. President, I would like to add that we strongly condemn the carnage wreaked by Israel's occupation forces on unarmed Palestinians awaiting life-saving aid and food delivery in Gaza on 29 February. This is another manifestation of Israel's pervasive and continuous violations of international humanitarian law. Mr. President, it is rather unfortunate, to say the least, that the various efforts deployed by the international community to end this catastrophic humanitarian disaster in the Gaza Strip have not yet yielded positive results. It is in this context that we welcome your timely initiatives to resume the 10th Emergency Special Session of the General Assembly, which led to the adoption of the two resolutions of 26 October and 10 December 2023, respectively. These resolutions, among other provisions, called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire while demanding that all parties comply with their obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law, notably with regard to the protection of civilians. In the same vein, we had occasion to commend the historical initiative of the United Nations Secretary General when he invoked the provisions of Article 99 of the United Nations Charter on 6 December 2023 2023 by drawing the attention of the Security Council to the urgent need for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. This singular action was indeed a declaration of the dangers posed by the continued war in Gaza to the maintenance of international peace and security. Mr. President, the foregoing calls for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza were not limited to the forums of the United Nations. We had cause to recall before this Assembly the resolution of the Joint Arab-Islamic Extraordinary Summit on Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people, held in Riyadh, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, on 11 November 2023. This called for an urgent and concerted global action to resolve the lingering question of Palestine, and in this regard the summit called for, and I quote, the breaking of the siege of Gaza, the cessation of armed aggression by Israel, the condemnation of attacks and targeting of civilians, the attacks, demolition and destruction of hospitals, religious and cultural sites, as they constitute acts of impunity and violation of international law, among other war crimes and atrocities, unquote. Mr. President, notwithstanding the foregoing efforts by the various actors within the United Nations, as well as by members of the international community, there are ominous signs of even greater danger ahead. In view of UNRWA's report on the impact of Israel's recent calls to dismantle UNRWA and for donors to freeze their funding to the agency, there is an imminent threat of mass starvation in the Gaza Strip due to the inadequate food supplies and essential services for the teeming number of Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territory. Accordingly, the current United Nations General Assembly session should take concrete measures to ensure the realization of the objectives and purposes of the United Nations. There is indeed a golden opportunity for the General Assembly to give expression to the dominant views of its member states and the world public opinion at large on the need for decisive action to halt the bloodshed and carnage to which Gaza is being subjected. In this regard, we commend the position adopted by the Joint Arab-Islamic Summit for the consideration of this meeting. The member states of the United Nations should exert diplomatic, political, and legal pressure on the Israeli occupation authorities to stop its crimes against humanity and to deter further aggression. Additionally, in order to give effect to the relevant UN resolutions on the restoration of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination within a two-state solution, we call for the convening of an international peace conference on Palestine to be convened on the basis of the agreed principles under international law. In conclusion, Mr. President, the international community should uphold its responsibility in halting the Israeli aggression on Gaza immediately. The world should support the Palestinian people to achieve their right to self-determination and establish their sovereign and independent state on their territory occupied since 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital, in line with the relevant UN resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative. I thank you, Mr.